The next second, more than a dozen intimate photos of her and Lorenzo came through. I stared at them, my eyes burning.
Elena, do you really think Lorenzo's loves you? Let's make a bet. Do you think he'll come back tonight to celebrate your birthday?
I didn't reply. I saved every single photo. Taking a slow breath, I sent Lorenzo one last message.
I'll be waiting for you tonight.
He replied instantly.
I'll be right back, baby.
But he never showed up. By late night, the steak on the table had gone cold and stiff. When the clock struck midnight, I picked up the plate and dumped everything into the trash. My phone screen lit up, a video from Isabella. I thought I had already gone numb, but the moment I pressed play, tears streamed down my face anyway. The video showed two bodies tangled together on a mess of sheets. The sounds of movement and heavy breathing cut straight through me. I grabbed the framed photo of Lorenzo and me from the nightstand and hurled it onto the marble floor. The sound of shattering glass was swallowed by the noise from the video. I bit down hard on my lip, my nails digging into my palm as tears fell onto the back of my hand. The video kept playing. Isabella, flushed and breathless, looked at him.
Do you love me or Elena?
Lorenzo's gaze was unfocused. His movements didn't slow.
You really bringing her up right now? Of course it's you.
Isabella laughed softly, unable to hide her satisfaction.
Then tell me, between me and her, who's better in bed?
Lorenzo sank his teeth sharply into her shoulder. Isabella let out a gasp. Gasping for breath, he curled a smirk at the corner of his mouth.
How could she even compare to you? You're the one I've always loved. She's just an obedient body to warm the bell.
On the night of my 18th birthday, my mafia boyfriend Lorenzo coaxed me into giving him my first time. I endured the tearing pain and gave him everything he wanted through his relentless demands that lasted the entire night. After putting me through 10 physically exhausting positions, Lorenzo slid a ring set with an onyx stone, the symbol of the Nostra family, onto my finger. He looked completely satisfied.
This is for my future wife. You know what that means.
Before I could even process his words, he had already thrown on a silk robe, lit a cigar, and walked out onto the balcony. I stared at the onyx ring on my finger, unable to stop the smile tugging at my lips. It was the first time Lorenzo had ever clearly expressed that he intended to marry me. I opened a drawer and took out the only thing my mother had left me, a silver pocket watch. I had planned to give it to him. I walked toward the balcony door. Just as I was about to push it open, Lorenzo's voice came through, clear as day.
That stupid girl was so easy to fool. Sleeping with her was just practice. Otherwise, how am I supposed to go after Elena? I'm not about to get kicked out of her bed for being bad at it.
My hand froze. The watch nearly slipped from my fingers. His phone was on speaker. The voice of one of his crew members came through loud and clear.
As expected of the Don, a low-level member's daughter is only good for practice. What did she taste like?
Lorenzo let out a soft laugh.
Not bad. More open than I expected. 10 times in one night and she held up.
Tears flooded my eyes instantly. My body started trembling uncontrollably. So I was nothing more than a rehearsal, a tool for him to sharpen his skills so he could climb higher. I couldn't hear anything else after that. When I heard footsteps approaching from the balcony, I stumbled back to the bed. All the happiness I had felt turned to ash, replaced by a piercing humiliation. I replayed every moment from that night. Lorenzo had insisted on trying 10 different difficult positions. Even when I was exhausted and begging him to stop, he showed no mercy. He never cared about how I felt. That wasn't intimacy. It was a cold clinical experiment on a woman's body. The bedroom was warm, but my heart felt like it had fallen into ice. I thought when he put that ring on my finger, my suffering was over. Now it all seemed laughable. Lorenzo walked back into the room. Out of habit, he pulled me into his arms and kissed my cheek.
Baby, what's wrong? You don't look happy.
He sounded concerned, like he actually cared. It's nothing. I was just thinking about my mother.
Oh.
I forced the tears back and steadied my voice. I hid the hand holding the watch beneath the blanket.
Don't be sad. You've got me now.
He didn't notice anything was wrong. He rubbed his chin lightly against my forehead. That gesture used to make my heart race. Now it only made me feel sick. I listened quietly as he whispered sweet words inside. Something in me had already died. He pulled me down with him, holding me as we lay there. I turned my back to him. The moment I closed my eyes, a tear slipped out and soaked into the pillow. I kept asking myself how I could have fallen for a heartless mafia man. How could I have been so stupid? Late at night, his breathing grew steady. I quietly reached over and picked up his phone from the nightstand. I had always believed there was absolute trust between us. I had never checked his phone before. I entered Isabella's birthday. The screen unlocked instantly. My hands shook violently as I opened the encrypted chat between him and Isabella. The moment I read the messages, tears hit the screen again. They had already planned everything. Next month, they would go to Sicily together to take over core operations, and me? I was nothing more than a cheap sacrifice, a stepping stone for his skills in bed. What Lorenzo didn't know was that I had also applied for a medical relief program in Sicily. I had wanted to surprise him. Now it all felt pointless. I let out a bitter laugh, locked the screen, and put the phone back. Then I picked up my own phone and sent an encrypted message to Rossi. Doctor, I've decided to accept the Doctors Without Borders assignment in Yemen. Rossi replied almost immediately. Elena, have you lost your mind? That place is real war zone hell. Constant bombardment, complete information blackout. Once you go, you may never come back. No one will be able to find you. I've thought it through, I'm sure. I'll send you the pass tomorrow morning. The process will take about half a month. Spend that time saying goodbye to your family. You may never see them again. I looked at the onyx ring on my finger and quietly typed back a single word. Okay, for the next 2 weeks, I would not see Lorenzo again. That night, I didn't sleep at all. By morning, Lorenzo had already left. On the table sat an omelet. He had made himself. In the past, I would have taken a picture and sent him countless messages thanking him. Now I didn't even look at it. I picked up the plate, dumped it straight into the trash, and walked out. This lie was over.
I went to the underground clinic and submitted my final confirmation for the medical relief program. Then I took my mother's silver pocket watch and headed to Lorenzo's private shooting range. I planned to confront him face to face. Lorenzo was the Don of the Mafia. When he was 18, he bought an entire basement level in the city center and turned it into his personal shooting range and armory. He hadn't treated me badly all these years. He just gave me his desire and gave someone else his love. I pushed open the heavy metal door. At a glance, I saw Isabella and Lorenzo flirting with each other.
Lelena, just try a bite.
Cut it out, you little tease.
Isabella was wearing a tight miniskirt and a low-cut camisole. She picked up a slice of spicy sausage pizza dripping with garlic sauce and held it up to Lorenzo's lips. They were standing close. Too close. Isabella leaned in, her chest nearly brushing against his arm. Lorenzo gave a helpless little smile. The way he looked at Isabella was full of indulgence. He opened his mouth to take a bite, then casually grabbed her wrist. At the sound of the door opening, he turned instinctively. Our eyes met across the room.
Elena, what are you doing here?
A flicker of panic crossed his face as he shot to his feet. I said nothing. My gaze locked onto the pizza box on the table. The heavy smell of garlic and grease hung in the air. And suddenly, I was pulled back to last month. We had gone at it 5 times in the lounge of this very shooting range. It had been so intense that afterward I collapsed from exhaustion, my blood sugar crashing. I had pulled a chocolate bar out of my bag. The wrapper had barely been opened when Lorenzo's expression darkened. He snatched it from my hand and threw it straight into the trash.
I've told you before, no food in my shooting range. If you mess up my weapons, you can't afford to replace them.
I had been pale, shaking, on the verge of passing out. But there was no concern in his eyes, only cold irritation. It wasn't until I actually collapsed that he rushed me to the crime family's medical room. I lay in bed that day with an IV in my arm. Lorenzo sat beside me and apologized.
I'm sorry, baby. I was in a bad mood today. I just can't stand the smell of food in here. You know how obsessive I am about my gear. That's my bottom line.
Back then I had felt wronged, but I told myself he valued those weapons more than anything. In the end, I forgave him, but now, standing in this shooting range filled with the sharp smell of garlic pizza, I finally understood. There was no bottom line. There was only a lack of love. I snapped back to the present and met his gaze. Didn't you say you hate people eating in the range? My nails dug into my palm until it went numb. Lorenzo swallowed and reached for my hand.
Just let me explain.
I'm the one who brought it in, Isabella said, rising to stand beside him, pressing close. Back at the apartment, I opened the drawer and tossed the silver pocket watch inside. For the past 2 weeks, Lorenzo had barely come back to our penthouse. He claimed there was an arms shipment at the docks that required his personal attention. But I knew the truth. He was with Isabella. Over the past few days, I had found Isabella's private social account. Photos of them filled the feed. Lorenzo dining with her at Michelin-starred restaurants, taking her out on a private yacht, even moving straight into her villa by the bay. While packing, I found the silver freesia necklace at the bottom of a drawer. It was a gift Lorenzo had picked out for me himself during our first year together. He knew freesia was my favorite flower, and he had a jeweler custom make it. I used to think it meant something. Later, during one of our arguments, Lorenzo had stormed out and knocked over the jewelry box on the table. The necklace hit the floor hard. The clasp snapped. He casually said he would get it fixed someday. He never brought it up again. I put the broken necklace back in the drawer, waiting for him to remember. He never did. I held the necklace in my hand for a long time. In the end, I left it where it was. I never confronted him about his lies. Instead, I used the time to finalize my departure with Doctors Without Borders. The day before I was set to leave New York City for Yemen was my birthday. It was also the 3rd anniversary of my relationship with Lorenzo. I picked up my phone and sent him a message. Lorenzo, do you remember what today is?
Your birthday. And our anniversary, baby. Of course I remember.
I had just stuffed the last piece of clothing into my suitcase when my phone buzzed again. A friend request from Isabella. I accepted it.
Hey, folks. You've just witnessed a heart-wrenching betrayal. A young woman thought she found love, but it turned out to be a cruel lie. The man she loved was cheating on her, and the pain is palpable. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's more drama in store. Will she take revenge? How will she deal with this heartbreak? And what secrets are still hidden? Don't miss out on the rest of this emotional roller coaster. Head back to the homepage to watch the other episodes and find out all the answers.